Guten Morgen und herzlich willkommen hier auf der A+A in Düsseldorf. Schön, dass Sie da sind. Hallo zusammen. Das ist manchmal ganz nett so, weil dann begrüßt man sich so gegenseitig und man hat das Gefühl, dass Sie da sind. Das freut mich sehr. Mein Name ist Dieter Könnes. Ich moderiere heute die Veranstaltung und freue mich ein bisschen durch das Programm, Sie geleiten und begleiten zu dürfen. Die Veranstaltung wird auf Englisch übersetzt und auch gleichzeitig auf dem LinkedIn-Kanal der A+A live gestreamt. Also insofern seien Sie froh, dass Sie hier sind, weil es hier eine wunderschöne Atmosphäre ist mit einer tollen Bühne. Aber auch draußen, wer eben heute hier nicht dabei sein kann, der verpasst jetzt zunächst mal nichts. Ich hoffe, Sie sitzen bequem, weil das, was ich so sehe mit Sitzkissen, das ist schon sehr gut ausgestattet. Also man könnte quasi sagen, sehr modern, weil es geht ja auch um moderne Arbeitswelten. Also was gibt es für Impulse? Wie sieht das Arbeiten der Zukunft aus? Was braucht man da nicht nur im Büroalltag, sondern beispielsweise auch, wenn es um Funktionskleidung geht? Also ich kann mir vorstellen, dass es da eine ganze Menge Fragen gibt. Und ich kann Ihnen versprechen, wir werden sehr viele von diesen Fragen beantworten, gleich schon in den Gesprächen. Und Sie sehen, hier sind einige Stühle aufgebaut. Also wir haben ja im Anschluss gleich einen tollen Expertentalk.
We'll have a great expert talk, but of course you are also invited to ask questions. Whenever you think that you are very interested in what was said and you would like to follow up on a special aspect, then just raise your hands and tell us where you come from and ask your question and we can give you an answer. So normally I also have a guest here next to me and I will say, great.
Das sind in dem Fall der Direktor der A+A, Lars Wismar, und der kann heute Morgen leider.
Unfortunately, one of my colleagues is not unable to come here today, but the good news is that we are now in the era of digitization and we then, of course, got the greeting from him in a pre-recorded version. I had the opportunity to talk to him about A+A and
Düsseldorf. I'm here with Lars Wismar. He's the new director of the A+A. Lars, why is it a very special feeling for you right now?
Well, it's a special feeling because we're just days ahead from opening the A&A. It is, for me personally, my first A+A. I've been working for Messe Düsseldorf for quite some years, but in this position I'm new, and I'm really looking forward for the show.
Why is the A+A important, not only for the industry, but also for the Messe Düsseldorf as a whole?
Well, we're the #1 platform when it comes to occupational safety and health. So we're the main platform definitely for the industry. But on the other side, we're participating in a bigger project to make the work environment worldwide a better place. And in order to support workers worldwide, we showcase a lot of products and ideas here in Düsseldorf.
What would you say, what are the highlights? What can the visitors expect and what's probably new?
Well, we got a lot of highlights. For me personally, I think the fashion show, the re-established fashion show, is one of the highlights where we display PPE equipment and also corporate fashion. We have the BASI Congress, which is a really important hub for the knowledge transfer during the show, in cooperation this year for the first time with the EXO Workathon and the Veracon Congress. So I think, very, very important and interesting parts we're going to be able to see here at the A+A.
What would you say, what is the A+A developing?
Well, I think we developed really good within the last couple of years. This year's show is going to be the biggest A+A ever. We got a lot of visions and ideas for the future. We want to expand various topics. We have already here this year, for example, the part of ergonomics, corporate fashion, components, very important parts for us we want to develop in the future. But we also want to make the visit and the stay here a little bit more worthwhile. We want to add additional benefits for visitors and exhibitors alike. So to take home new ideas, new concepts, and to change the work environment.
Unfortunately, you will not be able to attend the kickoff. Is there anything personal you would like to say?
Well, obviously, I would love to welcome everybody here in Düsseldorf at the A+A. I think we're going to have a fantastic show this year, and I wish everybody, visitors and exhibitors, a lot of success, a lot of new ideas, a lot of networking, a lot of meetings, and just a wonderful time here in Düsseldorf.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ja.
Well, it was the director. I think you can give him a little applause. I hope you liked his statement. He is the new director of A+A, who unfortunately is not here today, but he also wishes you a good time here during the show and a lot of success, and at the end of the day also great networking opportunities, because it's an aspect of a show that you use the opportunity to get into touch with other people, with other exhibitors, with your customers, and I hope that you really use this opportunity. And if we talk about the world of work and what will happen in the future and the different players involved, the companies involved, will now be shown in our little panel discussion. Well, there will be one chair which will be empty for the first part, but otherwise I would like to invite all the panelists, and after the panel you will have the opportunity to ask questions. So I will now look forward to Dr. Jörg Kaster, the project manager from the Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering. Welcome to you. We'll just start on the left and then move right. Then Thomas Kuhn, the technology reporter of the Wirtschaftswoche magazine. Welcome to you. Then we've got Dr. Urs Schneider, the head of department of the Fraunhofer Institute for Manufacturing, Engineering and Automation. Then I will be seated in the middle chair. Then we welcome Henk van Hout. He is the Secretary General of the European Safety Federation. Welcome to you, Henk. And the problem now is that we still only have men in this panel, and we said this is not possible, so a very warm welcome to Verena Ziegler, the co-founder of Open Dress and also the entrepreneur of the year 2022. Welcome to you. Ms. Ziegler, normally we would start with the lady, but I would like to build you a smooth bridge and you can enjoy first and talk later. So we will now start on my right-hand side. Mr. Castor, you are project manager at the Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering. The Fraunhofer Institute is a well-known term. Everybody knows Fraunhofer. But what are you focusing on in your work? At our institute, we focus on technology management and engineering. It's different from my colleague Mr. Schneider, who more develops technologies, but we try to think about how you can use future technologies in a productive way. And what is decisive here is the future of work. And we were already discussing when we are standing there, this is probably not the workplace of the future, but what should a modern workplace look like in the future? Well, I think the workplace will focus on the activities. There will be some differentiation between rooms for communication, for project work, for communication, and people will come back to the office in order to exchange, but there will be multi-local work, hybrid work, working from home. This is definitely something that will stay for the time being, and probably in a different ratio than we have seen during the corona pandemic, but there will be a mix in the future as well. I think you made a very interesting comment. You said that people have to come back together. The pandemic has made working from home much more popular, but this also had the effect that people no longer met each other. And then I know from people that they said, I'm happy to come back to the office because I would like to talk to real people again. In how far is this also a special challenge now for companies?
In my opinion, that is the main challenge we faced. Other topics like ergonomics and so on are things we can deal with, we can solve. But bringing people together, avoiding social erosion between quotes, this represents a mental burden too. And all the research that has been done in that area by our own institute and others demonstrate quite clearly that innovations, networking, ties to one's employing company involve personal contacts, are based on personal contact. This is a very important topic, and finding the right balance and motivating people to come back to the office is very probably the main challenge of the next few years. Avoiding social erosion. What about the health consequences? In one case, positive, when companies realize that they have to do more for their employees, do more for working coexistence in order to increase productivity, of course, also. On the one hand, it depends on the way your workplace is equipped. Of course, you want to find in your workplace that those items that you require to do your job properly. But aspects of communication, of personal contact are also important. On the one hand, it's a matter of equipment. On the other hand, it's also a matter of curatorship. I realize that this is not an art fair that we're at, but it's a matter of organizing events, live events and others to support personal contact, direct contact. And these are all aspects that companies will have to spend more time on in future. That is the social area, but health in the workplace is reflected in other ways too. Modern offices. I think any one of us would already be quite happy if they could raise and lower the level of their desk from time to time in order to switch from sitting to standing while working. What else is possible? Technically, ergonomically, we have the possibility of creating more ergonomic workplaces. Muscular and structural illnesses are still the main phenomena of non-ergonomic workplaces. This is something that can be done. But getting people to apply those technologies. Think of a car, if you're sitting in your car for a long time, depending on your manufacturer, a little coffee cup will appear in the display telling you that it's time for a coffee break, and this sort of thing should be possible in the office too. If you had an intelligent desk that would rise when it realizes that it's time for you to switch to a standing position for a while, yes, this could be supported with AI, in order to use this catchphrase here, a system that would understand how the user is using the desk in this particular instance. It's probably easier than having a conventional system where you're simply told to adjust your desk or get up from your seat and go for a coffee break. Various possibilities. There's a lot of innovation going on already. AI is not entirely coincidental. Thomas Kuhn, you're a technology reporter of the Wirtschaftswoche, an economic journal, and you've been concerning yourself with digital aspects, specifically with digital disruption. And we'll be coming back to this and the connection with AI in a little while. But how would you define digital disruption? Particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, we've been experiencing a process that had already occurred some 20 to 30 years ago. That was when PCs started coming into the offices. And over recent years, digital business processes are spreading into almost every area of work. In the past, this was described as ubiquitous computing, and now we have a ubiquitous digital presence, no longer tied to computers, Digital intelligence is at every place of work. You have a smartphone, which is a digital assistant. You have headphones that go everywhere with us. Depending on where you are, we have your personal digital environment. In connection with the question where this comes up in the workplace, this can lead to the development of entirely new business processes. Yes, I hear that, but what effects are we to expect? Can this still all be handled, or are there areas where you have reservations? Generally, the waves that come with digital innovation are often overestimated by people in the beginning, then to be underestimated, and ultimately the actual truth is very different from what we had initially conceived. So it's very difficult to pinpoint where transformation will actually take place and which effects will occur. But what is clear is that precisely like human beings being used to working with a notebook, an actual paper notebook or a typewriter, they had to learn that the computer became a digital companion. And in the same way, we are now having to learn that the digital presence is practically ubiquitous. And this understanding is the biggest challenge. We're now at a trade fair for safety in the workplace. And the processes that we're going to have to adjust to in future, which are those? Well, the rescue area is one particular area where we are facing change. You mean a relief in your work due to digital tools? Well, not only. If we look at hospitals, for example, as well as rescue work, how can we relieve people from less challenging mental work, so to speak, and deploy AI? We have a gentleman over on the side who has a background in that area. We might come over to you in a moment and ask you some questions. We mustn't forget that the fire truck still needs a driver. Whatever you do, you still need a driver to drive that truck. And this is certainly something that I've been concerned for many years. What do firemen do? In the past, you said, well, they go out and put fires out. But that's no longer their main line of work. They spend a lot of time dealing with hazardous substances. And being able to analyze a substance quickly and knowing how to deal with it swiftly are crucial. It's a matter of combining a physical ability as well as this intellectual speed. Possibly with the help of augmented reality, we will be able to display hazardous areas in buildings, parts which may stand are at risk of collapsing, for example. This fear of digitalization is often something that people express by saying that they're going to lose something in their job, something's going to be taken away from them. But you're saying that this is an advantage. Yes, definitely. It's going to be very expensive. It's a costly affair. But in every area of work, we are confronted with a tremendous shortage of labor. And it's a matter of utilizing AI to deploy humans as effectively and as productively as possible. And Thomas, there are other areas of support which might be a little more practice, which brings me to Dr. Urs Schneider, who works at the Fraunhofer Institute for Manufacturing, Engineering and Automation. Do the two of you have an interface? Well, we actually have our workplaces about 1 kilometer apart, so that's good. And here you are, even closer together at the A&A. Ergonomics and tools of the future. And now, if we both turn to the side and look up, is that an image of something that you are concerned with? Well, if this is an office worker, then I would say that he ought to spend more time in a fitness studio. We appreciate heavy physical work and want to maintain those. And there are some solutions involving exoskeletons where this is already quite feasible. Now, some of us will become curious when we hear the term exoskeleton. Some of us are thinking of films like Iron Man. Here we've got someone with a tailor-made suit and suddenly has superpowers. Is that the direction that this is going? Well, in Hall 5, we've got, no, not Iron Man, but a number of manufacturers of exoskeletons that are already quite wearable. Largely, they're intended to relieve pressure on the shoulders and back. But this year, they have been equipped with monitors that provide feedback, digital feedback, and there are a couple of exoskeletons from the Asian region as well. So it's not man or machine, human or machine, but human and machine. Yes, absolutely. We are generally referring to jobs that involve heavy lifting, mainly for strong men and strong women too, in some instances. And some of these jobs are quite monotonous mentally. If you have a job installing the bottom plates of vehicles, who of you have already switched a light bulb at home? Most of you. Now just imagine when your light bulb doesn't go in straight away, then your arm will say after a little while, come on now, come on. I can't do this much longer. And we're only talking about replacing a light bulb. In the port of Hamburg, we provided 50 welders with exoskeleton-type equipment, and their work was relieved, they were more rested, and they were able to achieve straighter welds because there was less of a burden on their arms. So you had an improved result. To what extent would artificial intelligence play a role? Well, thank goodness we have union workers who pay a great deal of attention to maintaining the focus on human beings. And luckily, these systems are still guided by the user. There are AI systems where there is some influence there, but we want the users themselves to maintain control of the equipment and how this is used. In this round, we've already spoken about AI a couple of times. Sometimes it is used as a looming threat, and maybe as a scientist who is involved in research, maybe for you, the positive sides outweigh the negatives. Certainly in this case they do. A modern motorized leg prosthesis or an exoskeleton utilize numerous AI-supported algorithms. They are sources of safe signals that allow the user to use them safely. And if that's already the present, then it will certainly also be the future. How much of an influence will AI have in the development of future solutions? The systems with new sensors and more lightweight motors need to be adjusted very, very quickly because we as human beings require fast decisions. And there is AI-supported decision-making support, which we human beings consider comfortable. So a situation that we have to adjust to, and one where we will all benefit from in the future, and therefore we will not have further reservations. Which brings me to our next speaker, Henk from Belgium. And because this is also going to be interpreted, you would have the opportunity for me to ask the questions in English. And if you like, you may answer in English too.
So, Henk van Hout, der Generalsekretär der European Safety Federation, ist jetzt bei mir.
We now have Henk van Hout, the General Secretary of the European Safety Generation.
Well, for starters, PPE, it's a very big variation of products, very different. And with that personal protective equipment, we should never forget the primary function, which is protecting the person wearing them, protecting his health and safety.
Yeah.
And that should be and has to be priority number one, no matter what.
Yeah.
Sustainability is needed, sure.
It's second.
But it's second, it's not first. We have to find a balance, and that's the big challenge for the sector, for the suppliers, to find that balance between, yes, we do what we can for sustainability, but never forget, and sometimes I have the feeling that users think sustainability is one and protection is two, but that's not correct. It has to be the other way around.
Safety first.
Safety first, which means sometimes you have to be a bit less sustainable maybe, at least today, but there's evolution. Things are not static. There's a lot of dynamic ongoing. So we're getting there.
But there are also good solutions when you hear to Verena. So we come later on to this point. Well, can you provide us with innovative approaches or maybe solutions in this industry?
Well, on sustainability, there's many aspects. So there's a lot of talk about recycling and reuse and so on. So, but there's also other aspects, and I think when we're looking at PPE, one very important one, in most cases, not always, is durability. The longer you can use a product, well, the less you have to recycle, the less waste, and so on and so on. So that's definitely an important one. So you see manufacturers looking at their supply chains. Do we really need to buy the products or the components where we are buying them? Do we need to produce that far away? All those things are put under question mark. At the same time, indeed, looking at materials, material choices, but also in the design. I mean, we do have in Europe legislation the right to repair, for instance, but that also for PPE is an important element. Also making recycling easier by certain types of design. So there's maybe you don't always see it, but the result is there, and it makes it more easy to work in a sustainable way.
When we talk about sustainability, the European Union must have a strategy. How does the strategy regarding sustainable textiles look like? Well, textiles, they are an important part of PPE, but there's also other elements. So, and on the other hand, textiles is if you call textiles, it's a huge variety. You're talking about your fast fashion, you're talking about personal protective equipment, not only clothing, but almost all equipment is using textiles. You're talking about geotextiles, you're talking about upholstery, so a huge variety. So I always have a bit of a problem if I see strategies for huge sectors with a very big variation of products, because you know it's not workable for part.
It's maybe workable for a good part, but not for everything. So that's already an issue there that we need to be able to have the variation. Of course, in textiles, there's a lot of work to do. I mean, everybody agrees. Indeed, if you look at fast fashion and so on, if you look at the waste mountains of textiles, there is a lot of work to do. That's clear. And again, there, the balance between what do you have to do? Because, for instance, one of the parts of the strategy is, or you have to be able to recycle this percentage, and new products have to contain X percentage of recycled material. On average, that's good, that's nice. But unfortunately, life is not average. There's the extremes. And for some products, you can go to maybe even 100% recycled material. Yeah. But for certain types of PPE, it's going to be zero today. So that's the big challenge again on finding the way in the middle and the balance.
And it's a really important point. Maybe we can discuss this with Verena because of her solutions. Thank you so far. And when there are any questions, wenn Sie Fragen haben, werden wir sie in dieser Runde im Anschluss natürlich nochmal gemeinsam stellen und dann auch beantworten. Sofort. Thank you, Henk. And ja, Verena Ziegler, kommen wir zu Ihnen, Gründerin der Open Dress GmbH. Sie sind im vergangenen Jahr Gründerin des Jahres gewesen.
You were the founder of the year 2022 with your company.
Das was macht?
Which is doing what? We do everything around 3D body scans. We give size recommendations for online shops, but we also make it possible for people to virtually try out clothing at home, and we also provide patterns that we create on the 3D avatar. Okay, thank you, but I would like to come back to a point which Henk mentioned, because you nodded, and this was a point where he said that not in all areas is it possible to use 100% recycled material. In how far can you confirm this from your area? I think the recycling topic is very, very difficult, to be honest, because it's a strategy that the federal government and Europe want to publish as a new EU standard. And this seems to be the panacea for everything. Just recycle everything and everything will be fine. But this is a problem, because what we saw in the 80s with bottle refunds, this doesn't work in the textile world. There are highly specialized fibers in mixed fabrics, and to take them apart and using a lot of energy to take them apart and then recycling them and mixing it with other materials in order to create a worse material, and then also to test out safety, this is something which is highly problematic in an area where occupational safety and health and highly functional materials are used. If I understand this correctly, then this approach comes too late. It is good to think about using recycled material, but from a technical point of view, it doesn't always make sense. Do people start too late? No, this is the wrong approach from my point of view. At least for many types of materials. If you have 100% cotton, no problem. But everything that you have in highly functional workwear, it's not the right way. The right way would be to start earlier, to save resources in the manufacturing. Yes, save resources, make sure that things really are made custom fit and not that you produce a lot and most of it is shredded and wasted. May I make a comment here? This discussion reminds me of what we are seeing in the construction industry, when people said we now have to go for better insulation, and one solution was the compound insulation materials, these boards with multiple layers which are good for insulation but are terrible if you want to reuse them. And the lesson learned should be not to insulate, but to insulate in a different way. Of course, we can have multi-component products, but we can also build to disassemble. You can also produce the insulation boards in such a way that it can be disassembled again. It might be a little bit more expensive, a little bit more complex, but it can be done. So I would not agree to you when you say this is the wrong way. No, I think this is a little bit of a propaganda. We will now do everything with recycled materials. And this is something that is important. Well, this is a wrong message. It's good that we have to save resources, that is without doubt. But if we say this is only possible by using recycled materials, we just heard that this is quite difficult for textiles. If I have my firefighting clothes, then it's highly functional fabric, different membranes, different distance fabrics. It's wonderful, but it cannot be disassembled. So can we also manufacture the fabrics in such a way that it can be disassembled? It now works in the construction industry, and it also needs to happen in the textile world. Sorry for getting in here. Yes, okay, thank you very much. This is a great approach for the existing products. So textile fibers, in how far you can disassemble them. But now let us move to another topic, the 3D scanners. Do you know your size of your pants? Yes, I've got 3 different sizes because the different manufacturers don't agree. Okay, and then people say for jeans I have size 34, 36, but then there is a 3D scanner and says, no, this is old-fashioned, stemming from past times, and it doesn't fit. And this means that you don't have resource-saving production. What is your approach? Well, nobody really seems to know what the customers really look like, and this is the big problem. The size tables that still stem from the 60s or the 70s, still from army times in some areas, it's no longer true. People have changed. Men have a completely different body now. They are narrow in the shoulders and a little heavier around the waist or the hips. Is that true? Yes, this is really an extreme change, and people also are taller now than ever before. May I come in here and ask you a question? For the sizes, everybody goes shopping, and people then ask, well, what is your size? I expect you are a size 102. Hasn't this changed in the textile industry? If not, it's absurd. Yes, it is absurd. Each brand has its own system. There is no uniform, harmonized system, and in order to be special, some people or some brands have developed their own sizes for their customer group, but nobody really knows what the customer group looks like. In how far can a 3D scanner also reduce the returns? Many people order from home and then they say, okay, I just ordered 2 pants and I will then send back the one that doesn't fit. A huge problem for the environment, because most of these parts will no longer be sold, but they will be thrown away because it's much more expensive to.
Did you get it?
Did you know this? Did you get this? I didn't know this. Yes, I knew that. But, well, we now want to make sure that you have the right size right from the start, so that you can order your size and no returns are happening any longer. But in order for the brands to also know their customers, you know, the avatars that are assembled, and then it says, this is my target group, 55 plus, and my size 52, 54, or whatever. and then you can produce in a more targeted way. But here we are in a show and for occupational safety and health. In how far can we then also optimize the clothing? Can it be more custom-made? Well, we train our body scan with AIs that it can do various moves, for example, moves of a soldier or moves over the head. So this is trained, the avatar is trained in this, and then the first patterns are produced for production in order to avoid the clothing to be too tight. If you wear a piece of clothing 8 hours a day and if you then can't move properly, then this is disadvantageous for safety and health at the workplace. Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Ziegler. Then let me ask around, do we have a hand mic so that we can also open the round for the audience? Do we have a handheld microphone? Otherwise, I will just move around a little bit, and I hope that the camera will follow me.
So, der Willi, ich komme einfach mit dem Mikrofon ein bisschen näher.
Okay, Will, here I am.
In einem guten Haushalt geht nichts verloren.
Come closer to you with the microphone.
So, vielleicht für die,
And
die dich nicht kennen,
maybe for those who do not know you, if people spend time on Instagram, they might be familiar with you through your Insta channel. Your main job is fireman? No, I'm a developer. When you were talking about the modern working world, but it's true that in my spare time I am a member of our volunteer fire brigade. You were paying great attention. To what extent have there been positive changes in your work through all of this? Certainly, our functional clothing has graduated, so to speak. It's become very, very protective indeed, very functional. We are now thinking of ways of how we can put out fires efficiently and productively. More efficiently, more productively. What you're wearing, I believe, is a standard issue. And although this is really important in your line of work, apparently it's not always perfectly, it doesn't always fit perfectly. Dear manufacturers, maybe you could use more modern technologies. Wouldn't that be cool? Yes, that would be cool, but in my case, it's not always the fault of the manufacturer. In my case, there are inserts in the clothes, and that's why it looks like this. And that would be a problem if we had to order clothing in smaller sizes. But it's kind of spooky if you have an avatar like this, and if you could order your fireman's clothes using an avatar. Yes, that would be really exciting. So if you're on if you want to go on Instagram and follow him, I think he has some 50,000 followers. How many? At least, yes. And the area of a fire brigade and training is really important to him. What you do, I do basic training and integration of women and persons with a physical handicap. There are people in my own team who have handicaps. We have wheelchair users on the team, and there are many ways that you can contribute. And I think this deserves a round of applause because this is a very good thing. And now we have one chair left for one last guest. And if our timing is right, then our last guest ought to be walking towards us in this moment. Oh, there he is. Here he is. Ralph Müller, welcome. Let me just say hello to everyone. Hello, how do you do? Hello, everyone. Oh, there we go. Successful actor, a former Mr. Universe. Ralph Müller doesn't really need an introduction. But you are at the A&A for Schaefer, for the Schaefer company. Where did this link arise? Well, first of all, they're making really great clothes, because no matter where you work, you go straight into the fitness studio in the same clothes, or go for a walk in the woods, or do some mountain climbing in the same clothes. I wear their clothes in LA too. I find them very good. Our concern, Ralph Miller and Hans Schaefer Workwear's joint concern, is to support and motivate skilled workers. When you look back, we had the baby boom years, 62 to 65 more or less, and those baby boom years ceased, and the baby gap, if you will, has led to a very big shortage of workers. And I remember when Ms. von der Leyen set up this campaign, Strong Types, to go into schools and encourage young people to think about finding work in a trade rather than going to a university or college. We're trying to do something similar today. Maybe we have all got our personal experiences when you consider the last carpenter, tile layer, plumber, or painter. The last time you needed one of them, it took a little while before they were able to commence work for you. And we mustn't forget that the cathedral in Cologne certainly wasn't the product of computer-generated work. It took a lot of very skilled hands to build that edifice, and those hands are still needed today. So you're trying to address young people and encouraging them to give the job of carpenter a try for a day to see what it's like, and maybe realize that it can be quite a cool job. When you talk to young people nowadays, they'll say, oh, I want to become a star soccer player, or I want to become a journalist on television, like some of us here, or a journalist somewhere else. They want to have fun. Aren't these the young people we call influencers today? I like to say, guys, if you want to become a gardener, if you want to work in construction, then you're also doing something for your physical health. These are all jobs, are all trades that you should at least take a peek at. Especially since COVID, since the 2 COVID years, we're finding that not as much is happening in the office. A lot of people only come into the office once or twice a week, if that, spend their time on the internet. And then we have the influencers, just like Andy Warhol said, everyone can be famous for 15 minutes. He said this back in the 1970s, but now this has actually become true. Everyone is spending time on their smartphone to become famous. But we want to use that smartphone to start our campaign and to encourage young people who are working in a trade, or who are training for a trade, to spend a few minutes talking to the wider public. We'd like to record those talks or interviews and use them to show other young people what is happening in those jobs. In one of my fitness studios, I spoke to a young man, I think this was last year, who said to me, I'm going to study, I'm going to go to university. And I met him a few months later in Germany and asked him, so what are you studying? And I said, oh, I'm not going to study. After all, I'm becoming a carpenter. And I said, oh, wow, what happened? And he said, well, he'd spent a little time looking at the trade of carpenting. And how did that happen? Well, a friend approached him. And he wanted to build something. And just imagine if you have a tabletop, a table that's maybe a yard or a yard and a half long, depending on how big your home is. And you're building that table yourself, or you built that table yourself. I was at an international building fair in Munich last year, and they have competitions, tile layers who make mosaics in Munich, and then they travel all the way to Australia to take part in other tiling competitions. And we reported about this and the level of intensity that these people develop for those competitions. They are supported and sponsored by their employers. And I believe that we should pay more attention to that, give more of a focus to this. This might be a topic for your very successful program on Stern TV, on that German program. Now we're hearing about war all the time, Ukraine, Israel, elsewhere. We're hearing that the economy is suffering. It's no longer in the same good shape that it was only a few years ago. We're hearing a lot of negative news, and I think it would be nice to show something positive and to show people that we're not all going down the drain. Tell young people that they're needed, that we need young people in trade. Of course, we a university leavers too. But my father built my first training weights. And look, 64 years later, you can still see the result of my father's dedication. Well, Ralph, let's talk about health. This is a true story. An acquaintance of mine, a tradesman of mine, told me a friend of his had a garage, and the mother of a young man came to him and said, "Hey, we have to talk. My son cannot pursue his apprenticeship here. We had been thinking of something completely different for him. I had no idea that he had to stand all day." So my acquaintance was a little surprised at that statement, that this mother was concerned at the fact that her son had to work while standing all day. Working in a trade implies physical work. And this is something that you want to do or need to do for a long time. And you don't want to be unable to work in your chosen profession after the age of 50 or 55. Which tips might you have, aside from telling us to wear safety shoes in case you drop something? Certainly, I've dropped a training weight from time to time, and it's a very good thing if you're wearing protective shoes then. In the past 45 years, I think I must have consumed entire herds of animals. But now I'm largely vegan. Vegan? From one day to the next? No, this is not something you can do overnight. Most people take time to convert their diet. We know that gorillas and elephants consume purely vegan food, and they're big and strong animals too. As children, you get pureed carrots, so that's good too. But at some point, our consumption of meat simply became excessive, and this, I think, is something that we can work. Okay. Remember, you can no longer eat the usual tradesman's lunch of a sausage and French fries. Well, in broad terms, when you're 20 or 30, you should try to do some physical exercise if you do not want to spend much of your time in the waiting rooms of your doctors 10 or 20 years later. When I go into fitness studios today, I have people in that age group who are in the fitness studio in the early morning before the tradesmen come into the fitness studios in Hans Schäfer's workwear and do their own physical training. When I was 28 or 29, I wasn't thinking about my nutrition in the same way, but now I'm 64. A few weeks ago, I did a test where my biological age was estimated at 39. And that 39-year-old that I was being compared to already needed to be quite fit too. You spent time in sports. Thankfully, you're in very good shape because you're still playing sports. Now, we don't all need to exercise for 4 to 5 hours every day. Well, 2 hours suffice. A lot of your health depends on your nutrition. I would say consume less meat. There's plenty of good vegetables to be had. And spend some time with physical exercise. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard that this gentleman has a great deal to tell us, and pretty soon you'll be able to pursue all of this on a podcast. Now I'd like to invite you all here to visit Hans Schäfer Workwear, where Ralph Muller is going to spend a little time still. If anyone wants to ask a question or wants a photo op, then I'll be happy to do that. This 39-year-old will be happy to be useful there. Let me just ask whether there is going to be, whether we need room for questions and answers now, or are we going to move on with the innovation circle, where we will be, so you can move to the other stand. Let's see just how fit you all are. Remember to pull your pants up. I think one of our friends managed 120 or 118. I was at 108. And we're all working on getting into the Guinness Book of World Records, setting a record on how long you were able to suspend yourself from a pair of working trousers. I'm sure there are other interesting questions that people will want answered. And right now, let me invite you to join us at the innovation round. Ask the questions you want to ask then, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.